Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week 6 here in CU 101 Culinary Foundations. Chef Matthew and I welcome you to another fine live session. Now that Chef Matthew is going to be famous because of Jeff's recommendation at Condé Nast. Hope you remember us when you get there. That's all I can say. Because you're going to make it. Yeah. Halfway home, guys. Can you believe it? We are in week 6 of 12. Congratulations, everybody. Chef Matthew and I were talking earlier. We are really impressed with this group of students that we have in this block. We were talking about some of the differences between this block and the last block, and there are a lot of really impressive differences as far as the performance, the grade level, the submission times, the attendance to live sessions. So we really appreciate that, and it's really fun for us as instructors to be a part of a group that is excelling and succeeding so well. So thank you, everybody, for giving us the pleasure of working with you. So it's very important. And I'm probably going to mention this next one about 15, 16 times throughout the next hour or so. Your assignment this week, week 6, will be due on Sunday. Sunday, S-U-N-D-A-Y. In Spanish, we say domingo. So it's going to be due this Sunday because it is week 6, and we have to accumulate grades a little bit earlier at the beginning of next week. So we appreciate everybody doing their best to get your assignments submitted by Sunday. It's a rather simple process. So before we get rolling, we need to make sure that everybody is respectful of what's going on in the background. Last week it was the other day. I don't remember which session it was, but there was like some people walking around that weren't clothed too well, and some other things in the background. So always be a little bit conscientious about what's going on the backside of you, because it could affect the way others feel on the screen. So let's make sure that we keep an eye on that throughout the class. I would appreciate that. Week 5, everybody. How'd it go? Yeah, thumbs up? Yeah, Rudy's up there like thumbs up. Yeah, we got Blake going. We got Sharon going. Julie's up there. What about you, Ruth? Yeah, no, 2 thumbs up from Ruth. So she must have liked. Deborah, what about you? How'd you like week 5? Was it a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up? All right, I'll take it. Jacqueline, what about you? You're finishing. You just finished it up, huh? Good job. And Benjamin's down there. Big old thumbs up. I like that, man. Good job, everybody. How did everybody like the discussion board? No. All right. That's cool. We want honest feedback in this program, and if it's a tool that you're not getting a lot out of, you have to let us know, because this program is a lot like the restaurant industry, and it's constantly evolving and constantly getting better. And the tool that we use is your feedback. So, certainly let us know what's going on. Jeffrey, what's up, man?
Yeah, the discussion, I didn't find the discussion too bad. The problem is that I wanted to hear about other produce, other things. I mean, obviously there was very limited. It didn't seem like there was a whole lot there.
Yeah.
Like we did the corn, and then some people did some other things. Celery, I think, was the other one. But it was really, I think that was my biggest complaint, the limit. I wanted to see more, like tomatoes and bell peppers and onions and stuff. It was limiting.
Good suggestion. I did read a lot of really good information, though. A lot of you did some really nice research out there and came up with a lot of good stuff. So thank you very much for doing that. And moving on to rice pilaf. What do you guys think about the rice pilaf? Anybody struggle with that? Okay. This is a prime. Oh, Amber's up there. You do all right with rice pilaf, Amber? No? Let's talk about it. Shoot me a message. I'll hook you up. I'll fix you up. Let's you have to remember with that rice pilaf, that technique, now that you've learned the technique, you can go in any direction you want. You can add sun-dried tomatoes to it. You can add roasted garlic to it. You can add charred vegetables to it. artichoke hearts, whatever you want to do. Now that you know the technique, so you can go in any direction that you want. Chef Matthew? What did the majority of people do? White beans or pinto beans?
Majority did pinto beans, but the beans looked great. And you know what? There were very few problems with the rice. I think there were a couple people that it didn't come out right, and it seemed like the issue was in the steps where you toast the rice and then you boil the stock. There's a very short window of opportunity there to get that stock in the rice, get it seasoned, covered, and get it covered tightly. And I think it's right in that spot where people were losing too much moisture, and so the rice was coming out chewy.
I gotcha.
Because it's real sensitive to moisture, as you know. It's
yes. So that's a good point. That's a good point. I appreciate that. That's good. How did everybody like the beans? Rudy, what happened, man? What's the matter with the beans?
I'm off mute. I just did like some of the ingredients that we had to throw in there, like the onions. I thought the onions were too big. Also, I don't like jalapenos, so that was one of my main things with the jalapenos. But the beans, and another thing, I don't think I cooked it long enough, so the beans were a little tender.
I gotcha. Yeah, those are good comments. And you have to remember what you're doing here in your first 12 weeks at Escoffier is just learning the techniques, right? Now that you've learned how to cook the beans, and Rudy, like you were just saying, you didn't care for this, or you didn't care for that. Now that you understand the technique, you're able to take it in any direction that you want. If applewood smoked bacon in your beans is your key to success, hey, have at it, man. That's what it's all about. And so we just want to make sure that that you all learn your techniques, and so that's a real point. Anybody out there do the white beans? Anybody? Nah, Deborah did. Ermelinda did. Cool. Awesome. So we had a couple people that did the white beans, which is really super popular. My wife, who is a chef as well, she Tucson chef for a couple of years. She made white beans today with sauteed spinach, charred jalapenos, and queso fresco, which was absolutely delicious. So once again, once you learn the technique, you can go in any direction. Chef Matthew, how's the garden, buddy?
Man, I scrapped the garden. It's done for the winter.
In hibernation.
Yeah, pulled everything out. Now I'm raking leaves up around the yard and throwing them on my garden beds.
You got to get help for that. You know that.
Yeah, well, I have enough rakes. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, but it's only they're only good for about 10 minutes, and then they start
fading.
They start screaming and running around the yard. And
well, now that you've been unleashed to Condé Nast, you're probably gonna have to look at getting some domestic help to take care of those leaves and that other kind of stuff around the house. You're gonna be far too busy. Right?
Yes, far too busy.
Far too busy.
Yeah. So I think sanitation is looking good.
Awesome.
Uniforms are looking good. No toes this week. I saw some shoes that weren't appropriate, but they weren't bad or anything. They just weren't appropriate for the kitchen. I mean, the whole point really is just to get you used to being industry ready. I want you to walk into a kitchen in shoes that you're comfortable in, and in a hat and in a uniform, and you're comfortable in it because you're used to it. That's the point. So let's see. So sanitation was good. And just a few issues with narratives on the production notes. I always want to make sure everybody's doing the production notes. It's every recipe every week. And also the flavor journal. It's down in that section on the narrative where it says flavor wheel. You're going to do every recipe every week. All of those taste, texture, aroma, and whatever the fourth one is. I forget it all of a sudden. But
wait. What are the assignments due this week? Sunday.
Oh,
Oh, it just popped into my head. I'm sorry.
Right. Was anybody else thinking Sunday when he asked that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see heads nod. Yes. Yes. Hey, you know what? Good news, big news. I'm so excited. I have to tell this right now. A former student of mine from, oh my gosh, it has to be 8 years ago, maybe. Was a graduate here in Indianapolis. He is the chef at a restaurant in Mexico City that just got a ranking of number 3 in the top 50 of Latin American restaurants.
Wow.
I
What's
know.
his name?
His name is Omar Guzman Oyena.
Wow. Pretty
And the
cool.
restaurant is
Quitonil
Pujol.
is what?
Pujol. I put it in the chat.
Pujol.
Looks like, yeah, Pujol.
Pujol.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's an Enrique Oviella concept, and that man is amazing, and that is so cool that he got that.
Yeah, he started working there maybe 2 years ago. I remember when he moved away from Indianapolis, but he's dynamite. I'd love to say I taught him everything, but really, he was a student. I learned more from him than he learned from me, I think. But that happens, doesn't it, Chef?
I had the pleasure of eating there not too long ago, and it was a very memorable experience. When I left, I had to mortgage my house so I could pay the bill, but it was a fantastic experience. Not inexpensive by any means. How's everybody doing? Holding up their fingers.
They're doing it. It's good. Right? Yeah, it's looking good. So they did this, and now they're going to do this. Yeah.
Awesome. Good job, everybody. That's some great feedback from Chef Matthew about our overall assignments this week. And as the instructor, I get very excited when I hear him talk that way. So congratulations, everybody. That's great to hear. Your assignments are due this Sunday. Don't forget, right? We're going to keep repeating that throughout the broadcast this evening because we want to make sure that everybody knows. We don't want to see anybody lose any points. This week, we have our mid-course survey coming up. I might have said end-of-course survey in the video, and I apologize for that, but it is mid-course survey. We would appreciate if everybody could take that following this class. We also appreciate your honest feedback. As young culinarians entering into industry, you will all have to learn how to deal with feedback. Feedback is a critical tool that will help you grow and evolve into a very effective chef. We utilize all of your feedback here to improve this program. Jeffrey made some comments, and then Rudy made some comments. All of these comments we take into consideration to help evolve the program. It's never going to stop the evolution. It's only going to get better and better. So please remember to take the mid-course survey following this class this evening. We would really appreciate it. And please, please, please remember to post attendance at least once every 3 days in this course. If everybody could do that, I would really appreciate it. You can do a knowledge check, discussion board, submit an assignment, your mid-course survey, participate in the discussion board once every 3 days. This way we keep you fresh in the system. We're right next to the program. The people that post attendance on a regular basis in this program are the ones that succeed. And we want to see everybody succeed. So we ask, watch a live session archive, do something, post attendance every couple of days. This way we know you're fresh, you're involved, you're in the fish tank, you're going to stay wet, and you're going to learn a lot. So do us that favor. It would be absolutely wonderful. Week 6, everybody. Let's take a look and see what we got going on this week here in CU 101. Pop over to our class page. Isn't this fancy? Look at that. Look at that. Look at that thumbnail up there, huh? Yeah. Did everybody watch that little video? That is written and produced by me.
Is that the right page, Chef?
I hope so. Am I on the right page? Which page am I on?
No.
No? Did I switch to the wrong one? Let's try this one more time. This should be it. Are we there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Is that better? All right.
Yep.
I want to make sure everybody's working or watching this video on a regular basis. It also gets sent out through your Moodle message. It's very, very important. It gives you tricks and hints to come up for the week. I spend a lot of time working on these videos every week, so make sure they're watched. Week 6, at the top of the page, you find the mid-course survey. Make sure you take it following this class. Then we have research materials and knowledge check. Those two coincide this week, so make sure you get that done by Thursday. Knock it out of the park. And then new here in CU 101, we have the conversion knowledge check. And if you click on this little thing right here, conversion help, it's going to take you to a link. If you follow the link, that's going to take you into some charts that will help you learn conversion. Conversion generally is memorized over time, right? You know, this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but you will memorize these, and it really helps you function effectively in industry. 16 tablespoons in a cup, 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, 8 ounces in a cup, 16 ounces in a pint, 32 ounces in a quart, 64.5 gallon, 128 in a gallon. You're going to have to learn and memorize all this stuff, especially when you're working with your cooks. You're scaling recipes up, you're scaling recipes down. Gallon man, to be politically correct today, we're going to say gallon person because we don't want to gender identify. This is a chart that will really help you learn. It's very effective. I hung this up. I was the chef for the DoubleTree Hotel for quite a while, and my daughter made this in grade school. And I put it up in the window thinking it would be kind of a novelty. But the cooks would stand there and study it, and they actually learned quite a bit. So it's a very, very effective tool. Then we have other charts in here that will help you as well with your week 6 conversion material that you will do here. So that's 2 knowledge checks this week. Don't forget, we want to see those get in by Saturday. It's very, very important because we're closing the week out early. Did I mention the assignments are due by Sunday, Chef Matthew?
Oh man, good thing you brought that up.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, we got this going on. Live session. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here tonight. Don't forget, if you're not here, but you are, but if you aren't, you know, you can always watch the live session archive. And if you have any questions about this week's assignment, certainly feel free to check into there. Discussion board this week is actually a reflection. It's a form that you're going to be filling out about handling produce. We're going to continue to work on that. So this attempt must be done by Saturday. Saturday, please, November the 3rd. Is that correct? Saturday. Yep, Saturday, November the 3rd. So please make sure you get your discussion reflection sheet submitted. You do not have to make responses this week. And then down here, you have your assignments. So that is our week here in CU 101 at a glance. Don't forget, with those conversion charts, a lot of you guys are going to look at it and you're going to forget it as soon as you walk away. It's a method of memorization, and it also comes from working with that stuff in repetition. Okay? It is extremely critical that you as a chef are able to scale recipes, right? You know, hey, a quarter cup, I only have teaspoons to measure with. How many teaspoons is that? Or tablespoons is that, right? Quarter cup is 4 tablespoons. You should need to learn this stuff right off the top of your head so you can scale recipes effectively and instruct your staffs properly once you get out there into industry. Poaching, how many people have out there have poached before? A couple of you have, huh? Okay.
I've poached in the sun. Is that the same?
In the sun, right? Good, good, good. We're not talking about chasing wild animals either, and it's not, you know, rhinos on the Sierra somewhere. But poaching is a very common cooking technique. Basically, what it means is to cook in a simmering liquid. And we do not boil, and I'm going to mention this probably 2 or 3 times. We do not boil food when we poach. It does 2 very bad things to the protein. Number 1, it'll break the protein up. And then number 2, it forces it to become extremely tough. And then I didn't say this, but number 3, it also dries it out. So when you go to poach, you must make sure that that liquid is simmering. It is extremely critical. And then we have several different cooking methods that we refer to throughout this course. Dry heat is one of them, and this is referred to as a moist heat cooking method. Very, very important. Some common poached dishes out there that I'm sure some of you have had. Poached salmon with raspberry vinaigrette is a wonderful brunch item. Poached chicken wrapped in grape leaves cut into a roulade is another very common one. Pâtés, certain pâtés are wrapped and poached as well. And then shrimp is poached, eggs are poached. So it is quite a common cooking method that we deal with. So when it comes to poaching, we like to create the broth, and the name of the broth that we work with traditionally is called court bouillon. Court bouillon, translated into English, is literally a quick cooked broth, is all that it means. And we're not referring to the little cubes on the shelf. We're not looking for bouillon, right? We're looking for a court bouillon, which you are going to have to make this week with your assignment. A traditional court bouillon is made with water and acid, and the acid comes in the form of a wine or citrus, such as lemon, and then mirepoix, and then sometimes a sachet, depending on what you're cooking and the flavor profile that you're looking for. This week, we are looking, I think in the recipe, you have white wine is called for twice. Avoid sweet wines like a Riesling. Those things do not work out real well. Don't get into the bubblies, like the Proseccos and the Bruts and the Astis. Those do not work out very well. You want to stick primarily with a Chardonnay or a Pinot Grigio, a nice dry white wine. That white wine, you must remember, is to complement the flavor of your food, not to overpower the flavor of your food. Make sure you write that down and you remember it, okay? So you don't want to run out and grab a big red like a Nebbiolo and make a Bear Rouge instead of a Bear Blanc. It's going to overpower your food and it's not going to taste right. So you want to make sure that it complements. And then just a quick side note, traditionally in industry, when we get done poaching is something that we generally do in advance. So if we have poached salmon on our menu, we'll poach off what we need in the morning, cool it down, and then pull it out and use it as we need it for service. It's not something traditionally that we do to order. And that poaching liquid, when it's left over, generally we'll discard it. It's not something that you want to carry over from day to day, because the flavor profile is going to greatly change as that amount of liquid reduces and heats back up. So you need to be very, very careful. How many of you out there have poached eggs before? Bunch of y'all, huh? I'm starting to use that word y'all a lot. Yeah, and I had to go to South Carolina a couple years ago for a culinary competition. Everybody back there, y'all. I asked a lady at Walmart, what do you mean when you say y'all? But now I'm starting to use it a lot. So,
Chef, the plural of y'all is all y'all.
Oh, that's too much.
I know.
That's too much. I'm still learning the lingo, man. Yeah. Out here on the West Coast, we use things like dude and hey, and back on the East, it's y'all. So, okay. So when it comes to poaching eggs, right, we want to make sure that that liquid is at a simmer and that there is a small amount of acid that is in the water. That acid helps to coagulate the egg whites and create that teardrop shape when we poach our eggs. And the amount of acid that you're going to add sometimes is done by sense of feel, depending on how hard your water is and how much minerals are in your water. That will have a big effect on the type and the amount of acid that you use when it comes to poaching eggs. Traditionally, it's white vinegar, but when you guys get into industry, remember, not all white vinegar is the same, okay? There's a little small thing on the label of all vinegars, and they sell vinegar by grain, right? Grain refers to the strength of the acidity within the vinegar, right? So 50 grain is traditionally what we cook with. However, you can get 100 grain vinegar that you will add a smaller quantity of the vinegar and still get the same effect. So be conscientious of that when you get yourself into industry. When we get into proteins, that's when we get into using court bouillons, which are the common things. So I mentioned that we do this generally in advance. In industry, we'll poach. We utilize temperature. A good way, if you don't, once you get going and you become a chef, we like to do a lot of sense of feel things, right? So when we go like this and we feel right here, like this, we know the food is raw still, right? But when I feel with my second finger or my middle finger, which I'm not going to raise in class, my palm becomes a little bit more tense, right? That tells me that protein is beginning to coagulate, the food is beginning to cook. By the time I get to my third finger, it's getting a little bit hard in there. That's like a medium well steak. That's what I'm feeling for. And that's also the fish that I want to feel for right there. And then when I get to my pinky, that palm area is rather firm. That's a well done steak. And that tells me my poultry is also cooked when it has that same feel. Poultry, we want to cook that to at least 160 degrees, just to ensure that we've killed all the bacteria. And in seafoods, generally, we work right around 140 degrees when it comes to poaching. So you want to make sure that when you utilize a thermometer in a protein, that it gets stuck into the thickest part of the meat. I've seen a lot of people just walk by with a thermometer and they just they'll put it into the thin part. Well, it really doesn't detect the part that really needs it, the thickest part of the protein, which is critical. Surface thermometers do not work for this type of activity, so don't think about doing that. Let's take a look at our recipe for court bouillon this week. So hopefully I can get it right. How am I doing, Chef Matthew?
There it is.
Am I good?
Yeah, assignments are due on Sunday.
I've lost all confidence in myself. Assignments are due when?
Sunday.
Sunday. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, I just accidentally said that. It came out.
It's dripping. All right, ladies and gents, this is the court bouillon recipe for this week. It makes 2 quarts, which also happens to be half a gallon or 64 ounces. I'm just getting you warmed up for your conversion check. This is a very traditional style of court bouillon. It's something that we would make in the hotel industry when we're preparing like a chaud-froid salmon, where we'll poach an entire fish. This is the same broth that we would use. All you basically do is you're going to combine all of the ingredients that are here on the recipe. You're going to bring it to a boil for just a couple of minutes. That's it, right? Basically, that boil helps soften the mirepoix and ensures that all the bacteria in there is properly dealt with. Reduce and let it simmer for a few minutes, about 20 minutes, and then your court bouillon is ready to go. This recipe says to strain and cool. I'm not a big believer in that. In the culinary industry, you're going to hear a lot of opinions about what's good and what's bad. I like to make sure that I like to leave my stuff in there because I think it adds to the additional flavor. So somebody's talking about my recipe.
Good point, Chef. And also I like to take from the bay leaf down and put it in a sachet, because sometimes those peppercorns get stuck on the fish, or the thyme gets stuck on it, and it just kind of looks sloppy. So
yeah. And that's a good suggestion, because the aesthetics of the poached item, we went through in the early 2000s and the 90s, we like to have food have that rustic look, where you would have a leaf of thyme or a sprig of rosemary stuck to the food, or a cracked black peppercorn, kind of that rustic artistic look to the food. Food is now changing back again, where we like things to be slick and clean. So Chef Matthew's suggestion of using a sachet in the court bouillon would be perfectly acceptable, especially in today's world. So do we have any questions? What about Amber? You've had your hand up for a little bit. Amber!
Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
Hi, cool. I had a question about the court bouillon, whatever it's called.
Court bouillon.
Yeah, court bouillon. Do we have to my grocery store where I work at, they have a wine section. They also have like cooking wine. Do you use like the cooking wine, or you use the wine, the fancy wine?
Fantastic question. I love that question. Cooking
Great.
wines became popular like in the 70s and the 80s as a way to curtail the cooks from drinking. Because and that's an absolute fact, because I was there and I know it and I tried it. But cooking wine in the kitchen we do not use, is a major no-no. It's extremely high in sodium, which prevents people from trying to drink it, right? Like was so often done in the 70s and 80s and 90s and probably still today. So please do not use cooking wine. You're going to get a completely different flavor profile. Your food will come out salty, and you will regret it. So definitely stick with the wine. Great to follow up on that as well. Don't go out and buy yourself a bottle of Opus One for this. It's not necessary. A decent bottle of Chard, the $4 a bottle, $3 chuck type thing will work out perfectly fine for this exercise. You're really working on the acidity.
Could we like use like the I don't know if you guys have it at all, but where I work at, it's like a little 4-pack of like little tiny bottles of wine.
Sure.
Can we use that?
Sure.
As long as it's not sweet wine.
Okay.
Just be careful. Look, you can look pretty much, and this is not a fact. This isn't a rock solid fact, but it's generally true. Look at the alcohol content. If it's above like 11%, it's pretty much almost always going to be dry wine. If it's below, like in the 7 or 6 or 8, it's going to be sweeter, just because the alcohol was not, or the sugar was not eaten by the grapes to produce the yeast to produce the alcohol. So,
Absolutely.
So go for the higher alcohol content.
Just think Chardonnay or Pinot Grigio. Those two will. Those are good standby wines. In industry, when you guys do get into the kitchen, don't run around looking for wine bottles. Generally, number one, we don't like glass in the kitchen because it doesn't do well in food. And number two, we generally buy wine in 18-liter boxes because of the volume that we go through. So that's when you do get into the kitchen, don't run around saying, hey, chef, where's the bottle of Chard? It's probably in the walk-in in the 18-liter box. And hopefully nobody's drinking out of it. Does that answer your question, Amber?
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's ask Alicia here.
With the wines and the Coeur Bouillon, I think we use white wine, right? Can we substitute it for the dry wine, or is that two different wines?
No, it's the same wine. It's a dry white wine. And like Chef Matthew was saying, traditionally the dry wine is going to be 11% and higher because of the amount of sugars that are consumed during the fermentation process of the wine. So you can check for that on the label to see if it is. If you're unsure and you're just stick with Chardonnay or Pinot Grigio, and that would be classified as a dry white wine.
No, what I was meaning was in the Coeur Bouillon, it says white wine, and then
Same thing.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
and
just
then for the Beurre Blanc, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So just buy one wine for both recipes. You'll be perfectly fine with that. You don't need to really get too heavily into the wines. When we cook a lot, you have to remember, like I said just a moment ago, we're not really looking for a high quality, crisp, fine finish wine in the kitchen. We're looking for something that complements our food, right? And that wine is going to be an element. And I know somebody out there is going to ask this. Yeah, well, when we add the wine to the food, isn't there going to be alcohol in the food? Not really, because alcohol evaporates at 176 degrees. If you bring a Coeur Bouillon to a boil at 212 degrees, it's going to evaporate 99.9999999% of the alcohol. There will still be a minute, immeasurable amount of alcohol left in there that is not detectable by the human body. And it's a big It's always been a big thing. Extracts that we use in baking, extracts are traditionally prepared with alcohol. However, when we add the extract to the cake batter, the cake doesn't come out tasting like alcohol because of the fact the alcohol cooks off at 176 degrees. So just keep that in the back of your pocket to remember that. So at some point in time in your career, you're probably going to make like a olive orange sauce, or you're going to make like a Jack Daniel's whiskey sauce. No, you don't need to card your customers because that alcohol is going to cook off by the time you get done working with it and gets to the table. Rudy, what's up, man?
What if we can't find some of the ingredients that are listed on the recipe? What if we can't? Like, I've never seen leeks in my life. Like at my local grocery stores and stuff, I can't find leeks anywhere. What if we can't find the ingredients?
You can substitute onion for that. For this court bouillon, that would be perfectly acceptable. Leeks are going to be a little bit sweeter, a little bit stronger in flavor. They're extremely fibrous. They're generally, if you just want to close your eyes and think about a huge, thick green onion, that's basically visually the way they look. They can be extremely dirty, filled with a lot of sand because they do grow down into the soil. And leeks are not so common in some areas, but in larger markets, you happen to see, when I say larger market, like larger cities, you happen to see a lot of leeks available that smaller communities might not have them. So, does that answer your question? I take care of it? Okay. Or you could use shallots as well. I like to use shallots on occasion. They're not the same flavor profile, but it still gets that savory flavor that you're looking for from the onion. Moving on to, what's that?
Sorry, the shallot's a small onion, right? The smallest onion?
Some wives' tales say it's a cross between a garlic and an onion. It's really not. It's its own species. They have a tendency to be about 2 inches long, brown outside exterior, purplish interior, and they have a tendency to be a little bit sweeter, a little bit stronger than your traditional onion. And because they are sweeter, when you go to saute with them, they will caramelize extremely quickly. So be conscientious of that.
Chef, I'm taking a look at the recipe, thinking about that court bouillon. It's a half gallon for that recipe. I think they could cut it in half and still be able to poach that chicken breast or fish fillet.
As long as they use a smaller pot, absolutely.
Yeah, because the smaller pot's going to make it deeper, and then because you want it to be covered completely. So yeah, you might get away with a half batch of court bouillon instead of a full batch. I'm
fine with that. Yeah, I don't have that. I'm fine with that. That's a good suggestion. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents, moving on to our next item this week. Pan steamed vegetables. It's kind of a hip thing today. But what we really want to learn is the steaming technique of these vegetables and creating a little bit of a glaze. I think this week we're working with broccoli is what the assignment calls for. However, once you get into industry, this is very common to do this with an assortment of vegetables, bâtonnets of zucchini, bâtonnets of red bell peppers, cuts of squashes, all sorts of different vegetables from cauliflower to this. Learn the technique this week, branch it off into your own once you get it done. So basically what this is you're creating a steam unit, steam unit in your saute pan. You add your broccoli, then you add your liquid, cover it, steam it for a couple of minutes, pull out the broccoli, tighten it with a little bit of butter, which I'm going to explain how to do that here in just a moment, and then add it back in, toss it. It's absolutely delicious. So that's what we're getting at this week. Taking a look at our pan steamed vegetables this week. Am I on the right page, Chef Matthew?
Sunday.
No, Sunday. Yes, assignments are due Sunday.
You caught me off guard because I was looking at something, so I just thought I'd answer that.
But I am on the right page, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Good. Yeah, assignments are due this Sunday, November the 4th. Right. Taking a look at our pan steamed vegetables for this week. Once again, ladies and gents, just remember the actual technique. That's the critical thing that's going on here. And once you get yourselves into industry, this technique is applicable to 1,000 different things that you could cook this way. So all you're going to do is you're going to get a saute pan. A traditional saute pan works perfectly fine for this with about a 2-inch lip on it. You're going to add about a 1/2 inch of water. I like to use vegetable stock when I do this. Feel free to do so. You can use chicken stock if you like. You can add a little bit of water in there with a little bit of that white wine. That's perfectly fine as well. And then you're going to bring that to a simmer. Add your broccoli, cover it up. Right, good night, right? And you're going to let it sit in there for about 5 minutes or so. And in here it says, but not soft, dark, or gray. So you want to make sure you do not overcook your broccoli. And just to bring this up as a quick side note, a lot of times in industry, you'll see some chefs that do add baking soda to this liquid in order to preserve the green color in the broccoli. I do not recommend doing that. I recommend cooking your broccoli properly because when you add the baking soda to the liquid, it robs the broccoli of the vitamins and minerals, and you are doing your customers a disservice by doing so. Yeah, you're robbing them. So after that broccoli becomes cooked, you're going to remove the lid, and then you're going to take the broccoli out with a slotted spoon to preserve the liquid into the pan. This is where we learn how to butter things out. You should have some butter already on your counter cut into slices. Slices, I say about a 1/4 inch thick. If you're slicing off of a little cube, you're going to slice 1/4 inch thick slices of butter. It should be fairly cold when you go to do this technique. And you're going to put your sauce over extremely low heat. That liquid is going to go over very, very low heat. And then taking 1 piece of butter at a time, you're going to swirl it into that sauce. You'll notice that the butter becomes emulsified, right? And it's going to thicken slightly. After that is done, after you've tossed in a couple of ounces of butter, you're going to add the broccoli back into the pan. You're going to toss it and then season it with salt and pepper as desired. All right. And once again, that technique is applicable to so many different forms of food. We actually do fish in that method. We do certain poultry dishes in that method. So once you learn this technique, I know it's broccoli. Not everybody's a fan of broccoli. Don't worry about it, but it's going to come out just fine. Jeff, what is your question?
Yeah, so I am on mute. So going back to the court bouillon, because there's a lot of acidity in there, how long will that stay in the fridge?
The court bouillon?
Yeah.
That'll last. I've never used it. I've never left it in there for more than a couple of days. But due to that high acidic level, I would imagine it could be in there for quite some time.
Okay. So we made that, did the full batch, and then okay. Yeah,
you could pull it out and use it as needed. Yeah. But traditionally, that is something in the industry that you're going to do a la minute. And that's a term that you'll hear quite a bit, which means at the minute. Okay. Versus something that you'll store in advance.
Yeah, because typically what happens now is I cook. I'm the test for my wife, and then my neighbors show up 2 days later, and we cook.
They heard what you had and they want it.
Yeah, they're eating really well for time.
That's all right. You're a popular guy, Chef Jeffrey. All right, Alicia, what's up?
Can the broccoli work with frozen broccoli in a bag, or would we buy fresh?
Highly unrecommended, because when they process fruits and vegetables from the field, they generally will blanch those vegetables, which means they'll bring the chlorophyll to the surface. So they're already cooked a certain amount of time. And you're going to run into the part where you're going to overcook them extremely quickly, and they become a little bit too tender. You're trying to preserve some of the crispness in the fresh vegetable. So I would not recommend it.
Okay.
Sound good? Good question, though. I appreciate that. All right, ladies and gents, let's move on to our final dish this evening. Not our final dish, but our next dish here. We're going to talk a little bit about poaching the actual protein here. So you're going to take your court bouillon, you're going to put it back on the stove. Okay, and you're going to bring it up to a boil, then turn it down to a simmer. We always, whenever we pull something out of the refrigerator, we like to bring it up to a boil as a matter of habit. That kills bacteria, settles everything in there. Then we turn it down to a simmer. Simmer being described as
Stop moving, or was that me?
What? Who?
We lost you there for a second, Chef.
Whoa.
You went into some zone.
Okay, because it says that my internet connection is unstable. Maybe I am. I don't know. Too many years in the restaurant industry. How am I doing now? Okay. So
You're good.
Okay, so now you've got your poaching liquid ready to go. So traditionally, we're going to poach in a little bit more of a shallow pan, one that's about a couple of inches deep. You need to make sure that when you add your poaching liquid, it has to thoroughly cover your poaching protein. Okay, so you don't want, if you decide that you're going to poach fish, you don't want the top of the fish sticking out, right? When we say poaching protein this week, that is your choice of protein to use. You can use a chicken breast, you can use a chicken thigh, perhaps some left over from when you butchered the chicken that's in your freezer. Do not put it into your court bouillon when it is frozen because that will cool your liquid down too much and really force those proteins to become a little bit too strong. So it's basically going to be fish or chicken that you're going to poach. There's a couple of different ways to go about this. So you have your poaching liquid ready. Some people will take a separate pan and put a small rack on the bottom of it, put their protein in, and then pour the poaching liquid over the top. That's one method. I don't like it. Too many steps. If I'm going to heat the poaching liquid up or the court bouillon up, I do it once. I'll have a small rack on the bottom of the pot, and then I'll set my protein down onto that. I'll poach it till that fish reaches an internal temperature of 160, chicken at 160. And then I'll take a slotted spoon or a slotted spatula, gently go underneath, lift it out, allow the liquid to drain, and then set it down, preferably on a wire rack. Wire racks are what we use in industry when we get done cooking things, because the wire rack allows the air to circulate completely around the product, so you don't get stuck with a hot bottom and a cold top. That's something that is very, very important for us from a food sanitation reason or thing. Let's take a quick look at our recipe here for this week. Am I on the right page there, Chef Matthew?
The poached protein?
Sunday for the assignments, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sunday. All right.
Sunday. I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night. Sunday.
Help me. All right. Poached protein, ladies and gents. This is the recipe that's up here on the board. I'd recommend that not being very aggressive with the size of your protein to start out with. A good acceptable size of a fish fillet would be 6 ounces. A good acceptable size of the chicken breast would be 6 ounces as well. And so that would be perfectly fine. You don't want to go with a larger piece. A lot of times when you poach larger pieces of protein, the exterior will become kind of tough while the interior will remain kind of tender. You want to create equalness throughout the whole thing. So be very conscientious. Try to get a flatter piece. Don't try to get one that's got a big mound in the center of it. You don't want a camel looking piece of chicken because otherwise it's going to be kind of rare in the center. This particular recipe does call for you to place the protein on an oiled rack that will fit into the poaching pan. Not absolutely necessary. If you don't have one, don't lose sleep. Don't run out and get one. You can gently set it into your court bouillon, poach it, slotted spatula or spatula, pull it out, allow the liquid to drain. You'll be fine. Life goes on. Or if you don't have the rack, a lot of times what we do in industry, we'll set it down on top of the mirepoix. So the mirepoix is on the bottom of the pot, and then the protein is on top of the mirepoix, and utilize the mirepoix as the rack. Okay. This recommends that you pour the court bouillon over the top. I'm fine if you want to put it into the pan. And then just make sure that it does not crack the boil. Very, very important. Make sure you've got your thermometer out to check your temperatures. 140 for fish, 160 for chicken. Remove protein, drain it, right? Like I said, I prefer that everything goes onto a wire rack when you're trying to cool it down. You've got to allow that air to circulate, right? So, and another big point of this is if I pull my chicken out and I put it down onto a plate to cool, right? That piece of chicken that's touching that plate is going to continue to cook because it can't release the heat. Whereas the top of the chicken is going to cool quickly and be perfectly done. So you do create a difference in doneness. So it's very, very important to pick up on that habit. And any questions about that? We got a couple of hands up. Let's go with Amber here real quick.
Hello,
Amber, what's up?
I have a question. Like, any kind of fish will work? Would that work at all? Like, or can it be like salmon?
Salmon, halibut, things. Okay, so the general rule of thumb to this is we generally try to avoid poaching fish from warm waters. And the mentality behind that is fish from warm waters, such as grouper, other varieties of sea bass, Chilean, or not Chilean sea bass, but other forms of sea bass, mahi-mahi, fish that are more lean will have a tendency to become drier than fish that are very high in fat. They seem to poach extremely well. Fish that are extremely high in fat would be fish. John Dory is absolutely fantastic. Alaskan halibut is wonderful. Chilean sea bass will rock your socks off. You'll be #1 in somebody's book if they eat that, trust me. So Atlantic salmon is also, try to avoid California halibut or Pacific halibut like they call it. Cod does not poach well either. So those are some suggestions of the fish. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah? Yes, sir.
All right. Jeffrey, what's up, man? What?
All right, yeah. So for reference and stuff, how is poaching fish texture-wise versus doing like a sous vide or something like that? How? I mean,
that's a really, really good question. You could probably get away with sous vide, the sous vide technique, or using your Jolie stick for your sous vide if you like. And I have an Anova stick that I like to use quite a bit. If there's some measure of liquid in there, I like when I poach fish in the sous vide technique to put butter directly into the bag and then poach it in the butter. So it's the same principle. But with the sous vide, you're going to have a much more controlled temperature range. I don't know that there's a big difference, and I don't know that I can actually tell the difference. I know that the sous vide is going to create a more moist product than would be the actual court bouillon. For those of you that don't know sous vide, S-O-U-S, next word, V-I-D-E, is a technique that we cook in sealed bags, where generally the majority of the air is removed, and then that is placed into a liquid, and we cook at a very, very specific temperature, 179.9 degrees for a period of time, whatever, it depends on what you're cooking. But sous vide you'll get into a little bit later in the course. Does that answer your question? All right, Rudy, what's up, man?
Yes, sir. I have a question. If we were doing just go ahead and poach the fish right after we make the broth, whatever I don't know how to pronounce it.
Court bouillon?
Yeah, the pork bouillon. Do we have to cool it? Do we have to cool it all the way, or can we just leave it hot so we can go ahead and poach the fish?
Yeah, you can. That's not what the recipe calls for. But I'm going to tell you a secret. That's what we do in industry, right? So we don't. I'm totally cool if you just make your court bouillon and go right in. You can skip the step of having to refrigerate it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're still going to be loved. Don't worry about it.
I was on Friday night dinner with that. So.
Yeah, traditionally, poached foods are chilled, refrigerated. A lot of them are. I mean, obviously, eggs aren't, and I've seen a couple of other dishes that aren't. But traditionally, like a poached fish would be something you could do, like a chaffois sauce over the top, which I can talk to you on the side about if you want to learn how to do that. Or something that you would serve in a garde-manger technique, meaning a chilled presentation.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Alicia, what's up?
What's the proper storage for the court bouillon?
Proper storage. Like we were just discussing, if you want to make your court bouillon and then go directly to poaching it, we're perfectly fine with that. You're not going to get knocked for it. However, proper storage is a plastic container with a lid. If you choose to store the product for a period of time, make sure there's not a lot of oxygen between the top of the lid and the top of the liquid. That oxygen that gets trapped in there is what starts to break the food down. But proper storage would be refrigeration 41 and under.
Yeah, and it's okay to cool that in ice before you put it in the fridge if it's piping hot. You know, if it cools down to room temperature before you get to it, that's fine. It's good for the fridge at that point. But
yeah,
How long does
right.
it last? How can you keep it?
How long can you keep it?
Yeah.
It's got a fairly long shelf life on it. I've never kept it for more than a couple of days, but I would imagine that it would last for a while because of the level of acidity that's in there.
yeah, with all stocks, you can keep. This is what I always did in the kitchen, and I know, Chef, you mentioned this in our previous block. With stocks, I keep them for a week, and then at the end of the week, I boil it, and then chill it properly, and put it back in the fridge. It's good for another week. But the point of making stock is not to keep it around for a month. It's to use it in a week. So if by chance you do have some left over at the end of a week, you're going to need to boil it to get more time out of it, but or freeze it at that point. So it'll store, and it's good to freeze too. But keep in mind, if you're going to poach salmon, then let's say you save it and you freeze it, and then a month later you thaw it and you go to poach halibut, it's going to taste like salmon. Because salmon is overpowering. So just keep in mind what you poached in it, and don't go poaching chicken in it the second time, or eggs.
It's just like they say, never drink Coca-Cola out of your coffee cup because it ain't going to taste right. Did they really say that somewhere?
I've never heard that.
What do the assignments do this week?
I don't know.
Here, Lorraine goes down there. She's going, Sunday! Sunday! All right. Let's move on. We got Julie. Julie.
This is you were speaking about poaching. I want to know what technique you use to poach 200 eggs at a time and warm them all up at the same time.
Okay, that's a fantastic question because I used to do that, and it was actually 600 eggs at a time. There's a couple of different methods that we utilize when we get into industry. We have very large units that are referred to as steamers that we can crack the eggs into what we call portion cups, little plastic cups that are disposable. We crack them into those, and then we pop them into the steamer, and we could poach off 100 at a time if we choose to do so. Then they go directly into an ice bath, which is a large, it's called a Lexan. It's a very large container, various sizes of depths, but we'll use a deep one, half ice, half water. Eggs go directly into that. That chills them immediately. To reheat, back in the steamer or into a poaching liquid when you're doing a very high volume brunch is what we'll do. We'll also use what we call Swiss kettles, a very popular method. They hold between 50 and 100 gallons of water at a time. You have to be extremely conscientious though, because you cannot put 200 eggs into the water simultaneously because you're going to end up with one big egg, right? I know that. Okay, so you have to keep that water going in a centrifuge, a circular type motion the entire time. Plenty of acidity. Add one egg at a time. Stir one egg at a time. One egg at a time. Does that answer your question? Uh-oh.
When I tried to teach myself French reading Escoffier's books when I was like 20, 25, I remember learning a technique of using poaching shrimp, cooling it down, dressing it in a vinaigrette. And I want to do that same technique for celery. And I want to know if the celery will absorb, will I come out with the same flavorful, mild vinaigrette in the celery to use in a composed salad as the shrimp. Cooking it in a court bouillon, cooling it, and then dressing it with a mild vinaigrette.
So you're trying to substitute shrimp for the celery?
I want to substitute celery for the shrimp, and it was Escoffier's his recipe, so I thought you'd know.
I wouldn't recommend using celery, and the reason for that is celery is not really farinaceous in nature. So you might want to consider doing something that is farinaceous in nature, meaning something that's going to absorb liquid and become tender as it cooks. Farinaceous items would include potato, yucca root, things of those nature. You're probably going to be able to absorb a lot more of that flavor and replicate the texture of the shrimp a lot more effectively than you would with celery.
Thank you for that suggestion. I'll try. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gents, we're almost there. Yeah, hopefully I don't get locked up and go out to space anymore because I just did that. Beurre blanc, right? Beurre blanc, right? Literally means white butter. When translated into English, that is our next recipe. Beurre blanc is a very, very common restaurant item. Traditionally, it is made in a saute pan after you have seared the particular or cooked the particular item that you are working with. So to give you a quick rundown, if I was doing salmon with capers and lemon, I would take my saute pan, I would get it hot, add a touch of olive oil, season my fish, sear my fish on both sides, cook it about 2/3 of the way, pull it, set it to the side, deglaze with white wine, shallots, and then let that white wine reduce by half. I have my butter cubed up on the counter already, cut about 1/4 inch, right? Turn that heat down to really low, and then take my saute pan and start swirling it around in a circular motion, adding 1 cube of butter, letting it emulsify. Adding another cube of butter, letting it emulsify. Beurre blanc is extremely temperature sensitive. It takes technique to make the sauce properly. If you add the butter too quickly, you will force the emulsion to break. An emulsion is a temporary suspension of two non-binding ingredients, right? White wine and butter do not naturally emulsify. When butter melts, it does not emulsify, it breaks into multiple parts. We want to keep that butter whole when it is melted. So we need to add that butter slowly over very low heat. So this week, what you're going to be doing, and once again, I know I've said this a couple of times this evening, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record. Or cassette, right? One of those cassettes. Like, yeah. Oh, 8-track. Does anybody remember 8-tracks? Yeah, I'm like a broken 8-track. It is critical that you focus on learning the technique of making the beurre blanc this week. Like it or not like it, it doesn't matter. The technique. Once you've mastered this technique, you can go into 1,000 different directions. I have probably made well over 1,500 beurre blancs in my career. Beurre blancs can be used on buffets. What we do is we'll make a larger quantity of beurre blanc by reducing white wine, shallots, garlic, other flavorings. We reduce it by half, and then we'll butter it out with a larger quantity of butter and hit it with a little bit of cornstarch, which helps to keep it emulsified under warmer temperatures, or add a touch of cream to it, which will help keep it emulsified on a buffet line. So there are a multitude of uses for this. I don't know what Escoffier was thinking when he didn't make this a mother sauce, right? Because, what happened? Yeah.
What happened? Yeah.
Simon's due on Sunday. So let's take a look at our recipe for this week. Over here. Are we there?
Yeah.
Everybody see that? All right. Beurre blanc, right? White butter. You might go into a restaurant and you might see Beurre Rouge. Beurre Rouge is fairly common as well, a little bit more common with red meats. Beurre Rouge would signify that it is made with a red wine, such as a Burgundy or a Nebbiolo, or a little bit of a bigger Pinot Noir, which is used for making champagne, if nobody knew that. But beurre blanc, and this is the recipe as it stands. This sauce goes extremely well with poultry and seafood. Absolutely delicious. I love to toss it in pasta. Once you guys get this technique down, the directions that you can go in this, you can add a touch of Dijon mustard to it. You can caramelize your shallots. You can add chipotle chili to it. You can add lemon segments. You can add capers. The world is yours. And this sauce is fun because of the balance it has on the palate. It takes technique to make it properly, though. So,
I promise you guys, once you make this, you'll never turn back. You will be a whole new person altogether because this is so tasty. I mean, who likes butter? Yeah, that's
Rudy,
all.
Rudy, you're gonna like this one. I can tell already. This one is a good one. I promise. Yeah. So you're gonna combine wine, vinegar, and shallots in a saucepan. You don't necessarily have to have the vinegar. You could just use the Chardonnay. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not real big on adding vinegars to beurre blancs, but that's just kind of a chef preference of mine. And then you're going to reduce that liquid until there's only about an ounce left. So basically, this is about 2/3 is the way that you're reducing this, or 3/4. Then you're going to cut your butter into small pieces. Do that before your stuff even gets on the stove. You're going to add your butter to the hot reduction by stirring or swirling your saucepan vigorously while adding one piece at a time until it is completely emulsified. Do not allow the sauce to boil. Once it has become emulsified, it will break into many pieces and become a mess. Okay? So once all of your butter is incorporated into the sauce, you're going to season it. Some people like to strain this sauce. Some people like to have the stuff in it. I prefer to have the stuff in it. It's just a preference. It's not a right or wrong thing, but the sauce is awesome. But once you add a little bit of texture in there by the shallots and everything else, it just kicks it up a notch. And then the aesthetics of the sauce greatly improve as well. Then you're going to hold the sauce in a warm, not hot place. So when I say warm, you're probably right around 100, 110 degrees. All you're trying to do is prevent that butter from solidifying again. If it gets too cold, you're done. Get out. If it gets too hot, you're done. Get out. So that is the basic technique for the beurre blanc. Do not be discouraged if it doesn't come out on your first attempt. It's okay. Not a problem. So, Rudy, what's going on, man?
Can we use a sauce bottle? Can we put like the sauce into a sauce bottle and like make like when we're planning when we do our picture lady the plating?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. Absolutely, yeah. That's a great idea. This is not, however, this is not a sauce that can be held day to day. Right? They're very difficult to reheat, and that's a whole other class that you have to learn how to do that. Just make sure that you only make what you're going to need. Traditionally, in the restaurant industry, high volume places will make what we call a 6th pan or a larger volume for service each night. However, in finer dining restaurants, we make it a la minute, which means to order, sear the fish, sear the chicken, make it in the pan right there. So that's why you see, chefs always walking around, going like this. It's not because we're psychologically inept. It's because we've been making beurre blanc all night. Jeffrey, what's up?
So last question, I promise.
You're fine.
One thing about with poaching and stuff, what is the water temperature? That was always a question I had. I know there's a difference between boiling and poaching, but what should our target water temperature be?
Standard rule of thumb is 1 notch below boiling.
Oh.
No, but and a little bit more technical answer, 212 is going to be your boiling temperature, obviously depending on your elevation and how long it takes, et cetera, et cetera. So you're right around 205. You want that water to be as close to a boil as you possibly can get it when you put your item in. I don't care if the water is boiling when you add your fish in there, because your fish should be 41 degrees or less when you add it. So it's like putting a big ice cube into the water. So when the water temperature comes back up, just keep it right around that 205 level.
205. Okay.
Yeah. But make sure if you're going to add, an 8-ounce portion of fish that's 41 degrees to barely simmering water,
Yeah,
I mean, you might as well get a straw and drink it, right? It's going to be like a glass of tea.
I always tell students it's kind of like this, and you're going to have to follow me here for a minute. So watch my hand. Boiling water is like this, right? Simmering water is like this. A slow poach is barely moving. So you want it kind of in the middle, look at the water. That's going to tell you all you need to know. You don't need to run around with a thermometer and stick it in the water every time. Oh my gosh, it's 5 degrees too much. Don't even, just look at the water. If it's going rapidly, I mean, some fish are going to fall apart in water that's going that fast. So that's probably the number one reason we don't boil the fish. Number two, it's going to cook the outside before it cooks the middle. So, but a poach is going to be somewhere around this. And just look at the water, see what it's doing. It's way easier than worrying about temperatures. Temperatures are very important, but for this exercise, look at the motion of the ocean.
Okay.
I'm glad Chef Matthew brought that point up. You guys are going to get hounded about temperatures over the next couple of weeks. The 41 to 135, surf safe this, surf safe that. As you progress through industry, you're going to learn to start touching, feeling, and seeing, and that's mostly what we work with once we develop that experience, because it allows us just to walk by and I can say, hey, Chef Jeffrey, that's simmering, get your stuff in there. I know it through the visual, and all of you will certainly be the same here after a period of time as well. So let's, anybody else have any questions before we move on to our assignment page for this week? Let's rock and roll, ladies and gents. Am I there, Chef Matthew?
There it is.
So you said Sunday, right? Sunday? Sunday. Yep. Assignment submission. It's, the first three on all three exercises are exactly the same as they are each week, right? But for the court bouillon, we need a picture of the simmering court bouillon after the mise en place and a picture of the strained court bouillon for this week. And then for the poached protein, obviously a picture of the mise en place, the proper portioned protein to poach. That's a lot of peas, right?
Protein prepared to poach.
Yeah. Poaching liquid. They want you to put a thermometer in there between 160 and 180. Higher, guys, higher than that. If it's higher than that, Chef Matthew's going to be fine with it, right?
Yeah.
And then the protein in the poaching liquid, and then protein removed from the poaching liquid. And then for the pan steamed vegetables prepared to steam, vegetables in the pan steaming, finished vegetable. And then for the beurre blanc, mise en place, reduced liquid, whisking in the butter, showing nappe consistency. Remember, that's where you put the spoon in, you rub your finger down the back, and it separates it out. And of course, your lovely narrative this week. Trust me, those narratives are going to pay off one of these days. They are going to become very valuable. Ladies and gents, a word of advice. Start networking with everybody that is on this page and get to know one another. The relationships that you develop now in culinary school are going to remain with you for the remainder of your career. And they're going to open doors for you. They're going to create opportunities. They're going to pave ways because of the relationships that you have on this screen. So take advantage of your fellow classmates. Yes. Any questions?
I want to jump back to narrative real quick. You guys can put all your narratives on one page. You can put them all together. Just label court bouillon, beurre blanc, steamed vegetable, and give me your details on it. That way I don't have 4 different pages to open up to try and look at. Makes my grading a little bit easier, if you would please.
Awesome. Good suggestion. Does anybody ever get addicted to anything? I just bought a whole case of Mentos. Yeah. I can't stop eating, man. Yeah.
Junior mints for me.
Staring at them. Yeah. They're yelling at me. Ladies and gents, great live session this evening. Some great questions. Thank you, everybody, for asking. Week 6 homework due this Sunday. Knowledge check due by Saturday. Discussion board due by Saturday. And certainly do not forget the mid-course survey. It is of utmost importance. And your knowledge checks, your conversion knowledge checks are, the information is directly below that. Do not forget that. If anyone has any questions, certainly feel free to reach out and ask me about your assignments, ask Chef Matthew about your grade. We are here to help you succeed. And congratulations, everyone, to making it to the halfway point. You all deserve to be here. Can't wait to see you all in week 12. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.